Hi, everybody. This is Dave Fry. You know what? It's a beautiful day out here, and I just wanted to share a little story with you just about where I grew up. So, I grew up on Clayton Road. I was moved here when I was 5 years old from another location somewhere in Olive. And one of the things I loved as a kid was collecting anything that had to do with nature. And this is outside, basically in the backyard, and I still have the rocks and seashells and stuff that I collected when I was a kid. I just at some point in my life I just threw them out in the backyard in a pile. This little dude here's my yin yang rock. I remember that guy for a long time. That guy was like, "What is this thing?" It's like brains. It looks like my brain. In kids, we always think about rocks with holes in them, that they were special. Fossils. This one had a unique circle on it, another one with a hole in it. Just the different colors and patterns, and there'd be a line. These are the ones that have crystals and stuff in it. And there's an old frisbee I found in the woods. Found that a couple years ago. That thing has been sitting in the woods, oh my gosh, since I was a big frisbeer in high school. So wow, that'd be 1980s. That thing's been around for a long time. So I don't remember what year it was, but I know that I was about 5 years old when I moved here, and yeah, this was it. This was where I grew up. This is where I was nourished and trained. This is my training ground where I became really acclimated with this beautiful thing called nature. And my father was big time into nature. Traditionally he was a shoe salesman for how he made a living, but he loved hunting and camping. He had been a part of the Boy Scouts back where he lived when he was younger in Nashville, Tennessee. And then, of course, in my life, I was excited to be a part of the Boy Scouts too, and I started off very young in the Cub Scouts, and then I moved my way slowly up the ranks to assistant junior scoutmaster when I was 18. And then around, I think it was around 19 when I left to go to college in Springfield, Missouri. But really quickly, I just wanted to share something with you, just how interesting nature is to me and why I find it so fascinating. And because if you've watched any of my videos and listened to what I've come to love and learn, and that is about an understanding of how our thinking works, nature is a huge part of my life. And even when I was really seriously caught up in this misunderstanding that I had anxiety and depression, nature was always there. Nature doesn't go anywhere just because my story of my life changes. That doesn't mean anything when it comes to nature. And I find that beautiful. I find that a beautiful metaphor in a way, because there's one thing that really is the fundamental building blocks of who we are, not just who we are, but this entire gorgeous universe that we live in, and how amazing our world is. It's truly fascinating. Now, this may not look like a beautiful day to a lot of people. Some people I know would call this a miserable day. But I don't see it as a miserable day because I don't have to wear sunglasses. It's not super hot. The color saturation of what I'm viewing right now is really nice. You get a real deep saturation of greens and browns and anything that has details to it. You can see the details without it being overwashed by the sun. So I think it's a gorgeous day. It's a little windy, so perhaps you'll hear some wind on the microphone here. I love how, when I think about myself now, at my age of 58 years old, I think about at one point I would, I'm sure, put my hands on this tree when I was a young man. And now I put my hands on this tree and I think, isn't it amazing how I have wrinkles and my skin is worn, and so is this tree bark. It has wrinkles and its bark is worn. And really together, even though it feels different, it feels firm and strong. And I know that my hands are brittle and dry and probably not as strong as this tree here. We're still made up of the same things, you know. This is a form of energy, if you want to call it that. I mean, obviously, we can get into the quantum details of it all, but this is a living entity here, and so we innocently sometimes separate ourselves. We identify ourselves with this physical being, and we forget how close we are and how interacted we are with nature, because without nature we wouldn't be here. And I love how life, again, life being the how do you describe life, really? Life is the energy behind everything, I guess, really. I don't know. What's a good way to describe life? Because life has a way of making things work, whether or not we have any control or not. So what's funny about a friend of mine that I haven't talked to in a long time, they recently said, "Hey, I'd love to get together and connect with you, but hey, can we skip talking about all how our thinking works stuff? Can we skip that?" And I'm like, "Oh, absolutely. You don't have to talk about it at all." But for me, I find it so fascinating. I find it as fascinating as anything else I've ever experienced in my life. And let's just take this scene for a second. There's no flowers. There's no leaves, that are attached here. There's not that we can see any insects or any life, and yet it's a gorgeous pattern. It's a gorgeous pattern. Even if you drew this on a piece of paper, you draw these big, beautiful lines. All these different patterns you'd see, all these different textures, and just the composition altogether. It's always fascinating. This one little just glimpse into the woods back here, again, where I ended up playing and being a part of and growing into. And this was just an amazing playground for anyone, but especially for me as a young boy and wanting to explore more and to see how nature worked and what cool things I could find. And even right now, just as we walk out here, it's like, isn't there's just so many cool things that are just like, what is all this in here? Isn't that amazing right in there? It's amazing how this old hickory tree is now becoming an integral part of nature. It is morphing back into the soil. It will decay and it will become soil. And within that soil, it'll be the richest soil because it's going from nature back to nature. It's following its natural cycle. And it will produce amazing results. So I love the metaphors of life, that we're constantly going through cycles. We are an energy, and we are always moving our energy. It's not that we move our energy, but energy is constantly moving from one form or one stage to another. And even when something as old and rotten as this old hickory tree, you can see that life continues. Life continues to grow, and it's incredible how soft this is. You know, it's green, it's soft, it's like moss. Maybe it's part lichen, part moss, part mushroom. I don't know for a fact, but I don't really care if I know it for a fact. I just like the curiosity of life. And to me, that's what's really important. And if I could share anything with any of you who are struggling and suffering, I know how tough it is. I know because I spent most of my life in this idea, that I was separate from nature in some form or fashion. I believed in a story of the identification of who I was more along the lines of the thoughts that I was experiencing, instead of knowing that thoughts happen and knowing that I will experience the thoughts, but that I'm not the experience. That it's one thing to have thoughts and to experience them, which happens all the times. Sometimes it feels like billions of times per second. It's one thing to have the experience of thoughts, but it's another thing to believe that you are the experience. And that is where the struggle comes from. Because thoughts, we all know thoughts, right? Thoughts will show up saying, oh, well, you know what? I've got to be something different than I am now. Right now, I've got to be something different. But why does any of that make any sense whatsoever? You know, what if our thinking is truly imagination? That it's made up of imagination. And somehow these trees were formed from billions of years. Why? Why were they formed, and why do they look like that? And perhaps it's imagination. What's really interesting about this area that I'm walking in right now was that for about, I'm going to say, 20 years, it was covered in, maybe longer, maybe 20, 30 years, it was covered in honeysuckle. And it covered this whole entire area, all the way down this slope, all the way down here, back here, all the way around here, this path, then all the way up here to the stairs. It was all honeysuckle. And some of the girth on those trunks of honeysuckle were, I don't know, 8-10 inches round. I had to get a chainsaw and cut those things down. So I did that last year. I cut everything down, and I stacked, if you can see that way over there, that's a huge pile of the honeysuckle trunks, basically. And I cleared out this whole area, And what happened is this reinsurgence of the natural plants that have probably been here for 30 or 40 years, but they came back. They came back. And I think that's a great metaphor too for our lives, because when we go against nature in a way, or when there's an invasive species that comes in, and you take the time to remove that invasive species, all of a sudden it's not like life ends. Life re-begins over again. And what if that's a metaphor for how our thinking works? That we get in any given moment, we get to be reborn again. We get a new chance, a new slate. Our slates are cleaned off, and we have a new, fresh start in any given moment. Part of my love for nature is my curiosity. And what I find to be really helpful in my life now, after I've had this understanding, is to see this rebirth of curiosity. It is off the charts at times. And my sister said she absolutely loves hiking with me because, for whatever reason, that curiosity just shows up on its own. And I see things that are just, I don't know how to explain it, but I see things differently for whatever reason. I see how, for instance, this old tree that I chopped down about, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, and this old tree is now being hollowed out, is being chopped up or pecked at. Maybe these are woodpeckers, I don't know, but they're searching for something. And they've done a great job. I'm sure Mother Nature and erosion has something to do with this too, but this whole section here has been carved out by something. And little things like that, may just look like an old tree stump, but there's more to it. There's like a story that's being told here. And I think maybe that's it. Maybe I see the story, and I don't need the communication of the way we speak with human to human, but this is a story, and there's something that's trying to tell me something. And so I see it, and I stop and I go, hey, check this out. Colors are amazing too. And as we take our time and look around, we can see colors just as vibrant as humanly imaginable. Just how incredible colors are. And we have a little bit of life there. You can see that little tiny bug right there. How small is he or she? Just incredibly small. My hands are a little shaky. I don't have a stabilizer, but you hear that bird? That bird is yapping away. That bird has a story to tell, and it's trying to tell me something. and then it goes quiet. And that's also another beautiful metaphor for how our thinking works. If you pay attention to how your thinking works, if you can listen to the thoughts that show up for you, you can see that they have like a pattern to them. There's times where they're quiet and they don't say anything at all, and then there's times when they pick back up and there's a lot of speed to them. And most of the time of my struggling and suffering is when my thoughts were very, very busy. And I explain a lot more in some of the other videos, but I want to just come out here today and just for fun, just play around a little bit and see how nature provides these beautiful metaphors for how our thinking works and how important that is to have this understanding. Because it changed my life completely. 1,000,000,000%. I was going to say million, and then I switched to billion at the last second. At the last nanosecond. This is a pathway, and when I was a kid, this path went all the way down about 3 miles to Queenie Park. And how amazing it was as a kid growing up here in the wildlife corridor, where you could let your kids just go grab a fishing pole and take off and walk all the way down to Queenie Park, fish for some bluegills, and then come back later on before dinner time. That was just a common thing. And sometimes we would make it there, and sometimes we'd go exploring and find junkyards and a pile of somebody's old farmer's trash was like finding treasure. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And I love this. I was digging through the woods one day and I found this. It's like, what is that? Oh my gosh. This is the old lawnmower cover. I guess the engine cover or something. Yeah, anyway, so it's like a monument. I found an old 5-gallon bucket. Not old, but I found a 5-gallon bucket with a hole in it. So I stuck it over there and I put some covering over it and some leaves, and now it's a nice little shelter for someone in there. Is our bird still here? Check this out. Check out way in the background here. Check that out. Check out all those patterns. Do they not look like, I don't know, like veins or synapses in our brains or the nerve endings in our body? Is that not the coolest thing on the planet, or what? So on a gray, cloudy day, you look up into the trees and you just see, oh my gosh, it's so incredible. The patterns. Wouldn't this be a great black and white photograph right here? If you just snap this right here. It's amazing. Nature is beautiful at every point, at every season, no matter what day it is, no matter what the weather's like. It's amazing. And again, if you're struggling or suffering, I highly recommend getting out in nature in any way possible. Local park, walk in someone else's neighborhood, just to feel into this energy that you are the same thing. You're the same energy. I see a friend right over there, right in there. It's a wren. It's a little house wren. He or she is very busy, very active, very talkative, and obviously not afraid of me at this point. And that's good. We have a mutual respect for each other. But I highly recommend, even when you're struggling and suffering, just to get out and go for a walk, even if it's just by yourself. Because if you're going to suffer indoors, and if if the suffering's happening, whether you're indoors or outdoors, you might as well go outdoors because there's a living breath to nature, like it's breathing in some form or fashion. It's it's an alive experience, and where the mind is so busy with thoughts about the future thoughts or the past thoughts, it seems like nature isn't important. But it is important because it is who we are. It's this gorgeous awakening, really. I mean, the suffering and the struggling is really, if you feel into that energy of like, where is the suffering and struggling coming from, you can feel it in your body, you can feel it in the thinking that you're having. And as you stand, if you stand next to a tree and you look up and you see how beautiful the tree is, and maybe you don't feel into the beauty quite yet, but the reality of the suffering while you're standing next to these gorgeous living entities is that, you are right here, right now. You're right here, right now. This is where you are. You're not being attacked by grizzly bears. You're not in the middle of a war zone. You're not starving. There's a beautiful sensation about this moment of now, like right this very second is where you are. And it may not feel comfortable, but it will pass in its own time, and it has to run its course. Sometimes thought storms are like cold. As soon as we get a cold, we get, oh my God, I don't want a cold. And we all know that you can add as much cold medicine as you want to the event, but it has to run its course. And so part of this understanding is knowing that we do get caught up in thought storms, and they happen naturally. There's nothing that you didn't make them happen. They happen naturally, and they run their course. And when they're finished with their course, we come right back to peace. We come right back to peace naturally. It's truly fascinating, and here's something I want to share with you that I didn't recognize until just a second ago, and that is this right here. This is a tree rubbing. So there's been deer through here, and they rub their antlers right here. I'm sure it's to leave a scent, but they also rub their antlers here. So that's interesting to see. I didn't recognize that before. But these thought storms that we have that run their course, and we innocently feel that we need to do something. We have to do something to make these thought storms go away. We get caught up in struggling and suffering, and our first innocent response is to knock it down some way. And I just want you to trust me on this one. I want you to see that if you can relax into the truth of who we are, we are truly this nature. We're no different. I'm no different than the ground that I stand on. So the living organisms around me are no different from the living organisms within me. And when we start to just take a deep breath into this experience of who we are, we start to feel into the heart of the matter. And I see a little bit of a heart there in the middle of this tree. Again, I apologize for not having a stabilizer, but not bad. Oh, I love this too. I love how this tree limb right here, I know it's kind of dark, but this tree, the tree has actually grown around this limb here. It's almost like there's two trees here, two trees at one time. I know that some of this you can't see as well as I can with the human eye, and that's again why I highly recommend that you get outdoors and in any weather, no matter what, in any, no matter where you are, no matter where you live, to get out and see all of these beautiful patterns. Hey, look at that right there. And look at the different colors. I know it might look like an ugly tree, but let's look beyond the tree and let's look beyond our thoughts. If we can look beyond our thoughts and beyond this tree, we can see that there's beautiful colors and patterns in there. And the more curious you become in no matter what you do, the more you invite curiosity and creativity to show up, because that's something that happens with us all the time. And look at all these lines and patterns and different colors of the different branches. You have the dark ones that come down here, and then you have all these light ones. These are the old honeysuckle right here. Curiosity is huge, and curiosity awakens us. It awakens us to new possibilities in life. And I appreciate your time hanging out with me in the backyard where, again, this was my playground from 5 years old to 19 years old. This was it. And at one point I knew every inch of these woods. I felt like that anyway. We built forts, and we built tree houses, and we had pathways, and we had this was it. This was our video games. This was our imagination. We were letting our imagination run by being a part of this amazing community of stories. We listened to nature to hear its stories. We became a part of its community in a way, and through all of my struggling and suffering, I knew somewhere deep down inside that there was something better. Nature was there with me all along, and some of the really most spectacular photographs I've ever taken was when I was struggling. So the idea of struggling being something that holds us back, I think that's a myth. Sometimes we have to go through hard times and struggle and let that event run its course so that we can get to the other side. And the other side, for me, is just this beautiful understanding of how our thinking works. And I plan on sharing it as much as possible to whoever will listen, especially those who are struggling and suffering, because you are this beautiful, gorgeous, living energy. And even now, when we see the trees that don't have leaves on them, and we think, oh, well, these are ugly. No, they're not ugly. They are saving their energy for the summer. So this is just a stage for them they know that they're not going to get as much water, and they know they're not going to get as much sunshine, so they go through a cycle that reduces the amount of effort that they have to produce to form leaves, and this is just a beautiful stage to witness. and to discover how amazing they are, that they can go through sub-zero temperatures, even here in Missouri where it gets down to -17 sometimes, and they thrive. They come right out of it and they thrive. This will be so thick next summer I won't be able to stand here. And when you're out walking, just stop. Just stop for a second. Close your eyes. Listen. Feel the breeze. Each one of these is like a signature. Each one of these is like a fingerprint. It's a story. Each one is a story. And each one will slowly turn back into soil, into the richest, most organic soil on the planet. And it will give life to something new. And in the springtime, we'll come out here and we'll move the leaves away and we'll see new growth. And that new growth will come up and it'll just be absolutely gorgeous. So again, I appreciate your time coming out here in my backyard and exploring the backyard a little bit and seeing where it takes us. Oh, wow. Here comes the sun. The sun changes everything. Just a beam of light, more energy. And it changes everything in the blink of an eye. Until next time, remember, you are energy. You are living energy. You are amazing human being. Life is amazing. I'm grateful to be alive. Please reach out, connect, leave a comment, ask a question, any question you want. Take care of yourself with great love and respect. The space between.